Science fiction is by far my favorite type of film. Every genre has its strengths and weaknesses, but what draws me to sci-fi is its ability to build new realities by manipulating time or technology or culture to create something fantastical, yet grounded in what we know. We get to experiment with humanity and play around with the what-ifs, like, what if we created artificial intelligence? What if we met alien life? Each film begins with a question like this, and as we evolve, so too does our answer. Sometimes AI is cruel and calculating, sometimes it's warm and loving. Where other genres inherit their worlds, science fiction gets to build one. Great sci-fi creates worlds that are natural and consistent when dealing with technologies and realities we don't fully understand. How we develop that understanding is critical so that what may seem impossible now can easily be understood by the audience. And this happens by filling your world with small, targeted details and avoiding including something that looks cool just because your world allows it to exist. Look at the world of Blade Runner 2049. In a world ravaged by climate change and overpopulation, we see small details like the seawall, off-world colonies, and the rising value of natural resources. It's a world that is fleshed out and allows us to really live in it. Things aren't just added in to surprise or impress. Contrast it with Valerian's virtual reality marketplace. Is it cool? Absolutely, but it exists to astound or move the plot forward rather than being a natural part of life in this world. The technology doesn't come up later in the movie, even when it would solve a lot of issues, and it leaves you wondering what the rules are. How is Agent Valerian, whose body is in a flat desert, but hand in a leveled market, able to fall down or go upstairs? Sci-fi technology is allowed to impress without seeming unnatural. In Valerian, the futuristic technology is supposed to be commonplace and negligible. Our characters have seen it all before, but it seems like the film is actively trying to show it off, so it doesn't feel like the same world our characters live in. Compare that to the world of Her, where all of the technology seems extremely natural. None of it tries to impress you, it's all just a normal part of this world, and our characters just happen to live in it. And it's those characters we use to explore these worlds that is just as important as the world itself. They're the ones who frame how we perceive what we're seeing. When a character is familiar with the world and its rules, they act as our guide, they ground us and provide a sense of normalcy to what we're seeing. And when they're good, we get characters like Rick Deckard or Judge Dredd. Take a look at this interview from the set of Star Wars, where Mark Hamill talks about the direction George Lucas gave him on navigating the universe of Star Wars as a character who's familiar with it.
George, the director, really wants us to do is play it exactly as if you were doing a story about a farm boy in Nebraska. And not on Tatooine, you know. I don't react like, oh my gosh, here's a robot and he's walking, he's talking.
See, George Lucas had a good grasp on how a familiar character should interact with the world around him. The basic lesson is that what shocks us about the world shouldn't shock our characters. And if these characters aren't working, it's because they aren't a good guide for the world, or maybe that world itself doesn't merit exploration. In those cases, we get Lee Weathers from Morgan or Jim and Aurora from Passengers. You could even compare the journey of Luke Skywalker with that of Triss from the Divergent franchise. See, in Divergent, society functions with 5 personality-based factions, and what makes Triss special is that she doesn't fit into any one faction. But that's also the issue. How can she be our guide to a world if she doesn't function anywhere in it? See, in 1984 and Brave New World, we spend time with characters who are a part of their dystopian societies, and then we slowly step outside of them. But early on in Divergent, we take Triss outside of the faction system, meaning we don't get to spend time exploring the world as a real part of it, but instead, we experience it through a character who exists outside it. Luke, on the other hand, doesn't leave Tatooine until halfway through Star Wars, and we spend time exploring that world. At the core, the reason Luke works and Triss doesn't is because Luke allows us to live in the Star Wars universe, while Triss lives outside of hers. Not all characters have to be our familiar guides though. What about when the world we need to explore is as foreign to us as it is to them? These characters experience the world in conjunction with the audience. They ask questions we ask and make the decisions we'd like to see them make. This is Dr. Louis Baker in Arrival or Major William Cage in Edge of Tomorrow. I think one of the best examples of this type of character, though, is the one and only Thomas Anderson, aka Neo from The Matrix. See, Neo is thrown into this world and adapts to it. His journey explores it and teaches us its rules in natural ways. He's freaked out when we would be, and excited about what excites us. While his reactions may not always align with that of the audience's, I think he still does a great job of interacting with this world how we would, and retaining some of the lessons we learn along the way. But unfamiliar characters don't always work. If they aren't growing into the world, or if they're not acting in ways that make any sense, then the world you built is basically for nothing. Coincidentally, we can actually see this issue pop up in the Wachowskis' other sci-fi epic, Jupiter Ascending. We can draw parallels where how Jupiter Jones fails and Neo succeeds. See, our audience chooses to go see a film, just like Neo chooses to leave the Matrix, but Jupiter isn't given that same choice. While Neo struggles to handle the new reality he's confronted with, Jupiter doesn't seem to struggle at all with the existence of alien life and an intergalactic royalty. As Neo gains familiarity with his world, he grows from needing to be rescued by others to rescuing others, while Jupiter is saved by other characters throughout the entire film. See, by the end of The Matrix, Neo thrives in both worlds, while Jupiter is more or less where she started off. Unfamiliar characters are a proxy for the audience. They have to explore the world in ways that are satisfying and not be strung along on a forced adventure that they never wanted and won't embrace. See, for sci-fi to thrive, it has to strike a very difficult balance. The world must be creative and new and exciting, yet natural and consistent and familiar. It needs to pair us with characters who can explore that world appropriately. See, science fiction challenges the audience to live in a new reality, and in that way, we get to learn lessons about our own. When it fails, we walk away feeling like we just watched a bad video game play out in front of us, but when it succeeds, it can really make you think. And when I watch great science fiction like Blade Runner or Arrival, I just walk out of the theater wanting to do one simple thing.